So there I was, standing on the sidewalk, squinting at the spot where my car used to be parked every morning without fail for the last 3 years. This morning, though, it was just gone. Not literally, like vanished into thin air, but someone else's car was squatting in my spot like it owned the place. And, well, it kind of did, at least at that moment. I wasn't just annoyed, I was irrationally furious. Who just takes someone else's parking spot in this neighborhood? Isn't there some unspoken rule about that? Have you ever found yourself fighting over something as small as a parking spot and then realized you lost way more than just that little piece of asphalt? Like suddenly, an entire quiet morning ritual you didn't even know you had gets ripped apart, and with it, a weird thread of neighborly trust? Yeah, this one little act spiraled into something way more personal pretty damn fast. See, my street isn't exactly a paradise for parking. We're in this suburban cluster where houses have garages jam-packed with junk, so everyone's forced to compete for those eyeball-sized patches on the curb. It always felt like a delicate balance, you know? Everyone kind of knew their place. But beneath the surface, there's this simmering tension like, who deserved the prime slots at the end of the day? It's not just about convenience, it's pride, it's status. It's peace of mind that you're not going to spend 20 minutes doing the awkward neighborhood parking dance every evening. So here I was, staring down the problem that everyone hints at but never really talks about. The daily parking spot war. And I quickly realized this wasn't just about a car taking my spot. It was the beginning of a neighborhood showdown I hadn't signed up for. What made that spot so special? It was just a few feet from my front door, shaded by that gnarly old oak tree that lets off this calming rustle every afternoon. It wasn't flashy or reserved by any sign, but in our world, nobody touched it, nobody challenged it. Sort of like the neighborhood throne. And now, someone had irreverently parked on it like they were claiming new territory. Little did I know that this odd morning frustration would draw in the whole block in a way even the mailman, bless his oblivious heart, would get tangled up in it. And trust me, this story was far from over at the moment I snapped that photo of Karen's shiny new sedan where my usual spot used to be. The neighborhood was about to get a lot less quiet. Alright, so let me back up a little and give you the full picture of this battleground we call our neighborhood street. See, parking isn't just limited, it's almost a sacred chessboard where everyone's making their move before dinner time. The garages? Oh, don't even ask. Packed with anything from half-built IKEA furniture to vintage gym gear. A hoarder's paradise, really. Which means our cars, the poor things, have to find a home outside. This means spots right in front of the house become literally the stuff of legends. Enter Karen. Now, Karen is a character you'd notice if you passed her at the mailbox or in the grocery store aisle, and not necessarily for the nicest reasons. She's this ultra-ambitious woman who somehow managed to make the best parking spot in the neighborhood her own little castle. The spot right under that massive oak tree, right by the mailbox where the sun filters just perfectly through the leaves and you almost forget you live surrounded by other people. She's that neighbor who will definitely let you know, subtly but firmly, that her spot is her kingdom. Karen drives this shiny new sedan that gleams like it belongs to a showroom, and it kinda matches her vibe, polished, a bit intimidating, and definitely strategic. She's taken it upon herself to claim that spot is hers. By this, I don't mean she has some official sign or anything legal. No, she just plants her car there every evening, and frankly, if you're not there before her, you're out of luck. Oh, then there's Mike. Now Mike is like the neighborhood's laid-back diplomat, a guy who's always trying to ease things over when it gets a little heated. His approach? Just stay out of the drama, keep smiling, and pour a cold drink when the block parties happen, which, trust me, with this parking drama, happen less and less. Mike lives a couple of houses down, drives a beat-up pickup that has seen better days, and honestly seems too chill to care much about a fave little patch of pavement. But even he gets roped into the tension, whether he wants to or not. What's really interesting, well, if you think about it, is that this whole who gets which spot business goes way beyond just where you park your car. It turns into something about respect and ownership. Like, if you lose your spot, it's almost like someone's poked at your slice of peace. No longer can you just breeze home, grab your keys, and know exactly where your car will be waiting. It's about the unspoken claim you have on the patch of curb outside your turf. Plus, there's this weird status thing going on. The prime spots, like Karen's place, are coveted not only for being convenient, but because they say, yeah, I have this under control. You see people's moods change when the parking game doesn't go their way. It's subtle, but it's there. And the early risers? They're the real winners, getting the premium parking before the rest of us even pour our morning coffee. So when Karen's car appeared in my spot, it wasn't just a parking problem, it was a challenge. That little act felt like a message. I'm rewriting the rules today. And honestly, that's when I started wondering what lengths people would go to just to keep or claim these spots. Because here's the thing. This wasn't just about convenience anymore. It was about pride and peace of mind, maybe even a little bit about territorial defense, as ridiculous as that sounds when we're just talking about street parking. But then, the story took a turn. After that morning showdown with Karen's car parked like a trophy in my usual place, things didn't just simmer, they heated up. Notes started appearing on windshields. Oh yes, passive-aggressive little sticky notes that made you read them twice to catch all the snark. And it wasn't just Karen and me anymore. Suddenly, the neighbors were picking sides, and those small acts of accidental mischief started creeping in. I'll admit, I didn't expect things to get as messy as they did. Cones showing up in driveways where they shouldn't be, cars mysteriously blocked in or out, and one evening Mike, trying to step in as mediator with all the good intentions in the world, ended up stirring the pot in ways none of us saw coming. And to top it off, our regular mailman, who's usually just the background character you wave to as he delivers letters, ended up stumbling into this mess in a way that nobody predicted. Apparently, there was more going on behind the scenes than just territorial neighbors and parking spots. But, I'm getting ahead of myself. The thing about this neighborhood is that beneath the sarcasm and the bickering, there's a strange kind of community. People trying to get along but constantly pushing boundaries. And what started as a simple parking dispute was now turning into a curious little saga that involved everyone from Karen's quiet power plays to Mike's good-hearted but flawed attempts at diplomacy, and even our oblivious mailman caught somewhere in the crossfire. What lengths would people go to just to keep their parking peace? And why was that spot at the end of the street so much more than just a place to park? Well, these questions were starting to unfold right in front of me, and trust me, no one was prepared for how tangled this was about to get. So, the next morning, I come out with this half-hoping, half-dreading feeling, and there it is again. Karen's sleek sedan chilling in my spot like it had just won some kind of asphalt lottery. I mean, I admired the audacity, but also, come on, this was my tiny throne of convenience. On the windshield was a little note. Not one of those heartfelt neighbor letters either, more like a passive-aggressive sugar-coated jab. It said something like, "Reclaimed my rightful place. Hope you find yours soon." Now, I don't want to start a war over a parking spot, but, that note? It was like flipping the neighborhood's unspoken code on its head. I couldn't just brush it off. So, I crafted my own note, kept it courteous-ish, but sprinkled with some cheek. It read, "Dear Karen, your rightful place was never on my watch. Perhaps a mutually agreed rotation might restore peace?" I tucked it under her wiper and waited to see if maybe, just maybe, we could negotiate some kind of ceasefire. But no, that wasn't how Karen rolls. The next few days, things shifted from quiet tension to this low-key turf war. Suddenly, cones popped up around the neighborhood in the most ridiculous places, like little plastic landmines. I found one blocking my driveway one morning, on purpose I'm sure, and when I hauled it off, it showed up on Mike's porch the next day with a little scrawl, "Keep your trucks out, please." Mike's trucks weren't even that big, but apparently stakes were getting higher. And then the blocking started. One afternoon, I returned from work and found my car squeezed in by Karen's sedan and another neighbor's old hatchback, who'd clearly taken sides. Mike was somewhere in the middle, ever the peacemaker, trying to mediate with his typical calm, but sometimes his good intentions backfired spectacularly. One evening, Mike decided to hold an unofficial parking council on his porch. He invited a few neighbors, including Karen and me, hoping to hash things out. I remember the scene, Mike's beat-up pickup beside his lawn chair, a cooler full of soda between us. But Karen showed up with a roster of parking spot rules she drafted on a clipboard. Seriously, a clipboard. She laid out detailed suggestions for who should park where, which obviously favored her prime spot. I tried to argue for fairness, Mike tried to soothe everyone, but by the end of the meeting it felt more like the brewing of a battle plan than a truce. The tension had thickened like a bad stew. As if that weren't enough, our friendly mailman, Bob, wandered right into the crossfire. Now, Bob usually just whizzes through on his route, ceramic mug in hand, more interested in finishing his deliveries than town politics. But one day, I catch him fiddling under the hood of a suspicious van parked dangerously close to my spot. Turns out, the reason my spot was missing wasn't just neighborhood rivalry or quirky battle tactics. See, Bob accidentally stumbled on this. A shady contractor was using that little strip of curb as a staging ground for work equipment without telling anyone. The van was packed with tools, cones, and God knows what else, and that's why the spot was no longer available, not just because Karen and the rest of us were at war. Bob tried to tell me, but word spreads fast, and suddenly everyone was talking about this real reason behind the van's invasion. Karen, of course, twisted it into a new argument, claiming she'd temporarily taken over to keep the neighborhood safe while the contractor worked. Mike, ever the peacemaker, was trying to find a middle ground that would make Bob happy and keep the contractor's gear out of people's way. But here's the kicker. The contractor's work wasn't going to be a quick job. Days turned into a week, and the parking chaos deepened. People were angrier than ever. The neighborhood's quiet street had morphed into a daily battleground, with alliances forming and cracking faster than you could say parallel park. One evening, I found another note on my windshield. This one from Mike, more of a plea than a warning. "Let's all try to keep things cool, folks. This isn't what any of us want." It was a small olive branch in the middle of a mess, but the tension hadn't eased one bit. And with the contractor's van still hogging the hottest spot, the neighborhood's parking war was only getting nastier. The mailman's accidental discovery flipped the script, but instead of solving anything, it just sent us into a whole new spiral of petty skirmishes and unanswered questions. It was like the spot wasn't just mine anymore. It was everyone's battlefield, and none of us wanted to back down. Not without a fight. But beneath all the sarcasm and competing agendas, I started wondering how far this would all go, and if we'd ever be able to look each other in the eye again once this was all over. So the whole thing finally unraveled on this surprisingly mild Saturday afternoon, after what felt like weeks of silent wars and shouted debates disguised as friendly chats on porches. The contractor's crew had packed up their gear, the bulky van rolled out, and for the first time in forever, that elusive parking spot was free. My spot. I walked out almost hesitantly, half expecting some new obstacle or surprise. But nope, it was just sitting there, quiet, waiting, yet nothing had happened, except, well, everything had. At first glance, it was just an empty curb, but to me, it had become this symbol of all the ridiculousness, pride, and tension that had snaked through our neighborhood. But instead of a triumphant victory dance, something unexpectedly mellowed the whole scene. Karen was there too, standing at the edge of her yard, looking a little out of sorts. I could tell she wasn't thrilled this was over, or maybe that she didn't get to win this round the way she'd hoped. I cleared my throat and started to say the usual, good to have my spot back, but before I could finish, Karen cut in, "Look, maybe this whole thing got out of hand." "It's just parking after all," she said, surprisingly sincere, her usual edge softened. I think we all needed to remember that. Mike strolled over, towel slung casually over his shoulder, flashing that laid-back grin like he was expecting this moment the whole time. "About time," he said. "I was starting to think you both were going to camp out there for good." We all laughed a little, the kind of genuine laugh that eases the pound of tension you didn't realize had been sitting in your shoulders for days. I realized in that moment how much this silly little spot had come to mean, not because of the asphalt or shade, but because of everything tangled up in it: ego, respect, a sense of belonging. Later that day, I found myself moving my car into the spot, figuring maybe I could reclaim my own little ritual. But as I shut the door, I caught myself thinking, was it worth it? The petty battles, the notes, the cold shoulders during neighborhood barbecues? Yeah, I'd got my spot back, but it left me wondering how many other cracks had formed underneath all the facade of neighborly niceties. Turns out, after all the firm stances and battles for prime curb real estate, the real lesson wasn't about parking at all. It was about what happens when you let pride run the show in a close-knit place. Sometimes losing a little ground, whether it's a parking spot or a grudge, can be what actually keeps things from falling apart completely. And the quietest revelation? That Mike was right to try his silly little peace talks all along, even if they seemed hopeless at times. The truce didn't come from rules or notes or parking councils. It came when we finally remembered we were neighbors first and drivers second. So yeah, I got my spot back, but the neighborhood felt a little different after. Maybe a little wiser, maybe a little more cautious. And as I park there each day now, I can't help but smile a little at the absurd saga that unfolded over this patch of street. But I gotta admit, sometimes, on those rare mornings when I see Karen's sedan waiting a few spaces down, I wonder, would I step up the game again? Or is some battles better left in the rearview mirror? Maybe that's a story for another day.